The United States of America, a beacon of freedom and opportunity, stands at a precipice. A colossal national debt casts a long shadow over its future, threatening to consume the American dream. Can this behemoth navigate the treacherous currents of the 21st century, or will it succumb to its own contradictions? America's ascent to global dominance was swift and absolute, igniting a relentless pursuit of power. Wars were waged, alliances forged, and trillions spent to secure its place atop the world order.
Yet, the cost of maintaining this global empire grew heavier, straining the nation's coffers. The bill, long overdue, was about to come due.
To the casual observer, America still shimmers, but cracks have begun to appear. The gap between the haves and the have-nots widens, threatening the notion of shared prosperity. The allure of American consumerism masks a deeper malaise, a decline in manufacturing and reliance on debt-fueled growth. On the horizon, storm clouds gather, demanding immediate attention. Climate change and technological advances present profound challenges, creating a perfect storm of uncertainty. At the heart of this storm stands America, its future uncertain, its choices fraught with consequence. America's debt crisis is the culmination of decades of fiscal policies favoring short-term gains.
Tax cuts and entitlement programs expanded without adequate funding, adding to the growing mountain of debt. Politicians, eager to appease voters, left future generations to grapple with the consequences.
At the heart of America's debt crisis lies the unshakable belief in endless growth.
This relentless pursuit of growth created a system inherently dependent on debt.
The illusion of endless growth masked a dangerous reality, that growth without limits is unsustainable. America's global military presence came at a staggering cost.
The wars in Afghanistan and Iraq drained the nation's treasury, leaving behind instability and resentment.
This pursuit of military dominance eroded America's economic foundations, diverting resources from domestic challenges. As the national debt soared, a silent crisis brewed within America's social safety net. Social Security and Medicare faced a demographic and financial reckoning, with trust funds nearing depletion. Politicians, fearful of alienating older voters, shied away from tackling the issue, leaving future generations to grapple with the consequences. America's position as the issuer of the world's reserve currency presented both a blessing and a curse.
Excessive borrowing could erode confidence in the dollar, potentially triggering a global financial crisis.
This delicate balancing act presented a formidable challenge for American policymakers. As the national debt continued its ascent, a sense of unease settled over the nation.
The debt-to-GDP ratio climbed steadily, diverting resources from essential government spending.
America stood at a crossroads, facing a choice between confronting its debt crisis or continuing down a path of unsustainable borrowing. The world holds its breath as the established order creaks under the strain of unseen forces.
Climate change and technological disruption create winners and losers in a high-stakes game.
The convergence of these forces creates a perfect storm, threatening to engulf even the most powerful nations. The Earth speaks in the language of floods and droughts, of wildfires and hurricanes. Climate change, once a distant threat whispered in hushed tones, has become an undeniable reality, a force of nature unleashed upon a world ill-prepared for its fury.
The consequences are far-reaching and devastating. Rising sea levels swallow coastal cities, displacing millions and redrawing maps with the stroke of a tide. Extreme weather events, once rare occurrences, become commonplace, disrupting agricultural production, straining infrastructure, and wreaking havoc on global supply chains.
The human cost is immeasurable, but the economic toll is equally staggering. Climate-related disasters already cost billions of dollars annually, and the price tag is only expected to rise in the coming decades. Insurance companies, once the guarantors against unforeseen calamities, face insolvency as the frequency and severity of extreme weather events outpace their ability to pay out claims.
But the true danger of climate change lies not just in its physical impacts, but in its potential to exacerbate existing tensions and ignite new conflicts. As resources become scarcer, as populations are displaced, and as nations grapple with the economic fallout of a changing climate, the competition for survival will intensify, pushing the world closer to the brink of chaos.
The digital revolution, once hailed as a harbinger of progress and prosperity, has unleashed forces that threaten to upend the very fabric of society. Artificial intelligence and automation, once the stuff of science fiction, are rapidly transforming the workforce, creating winners and losers in a high-stakes game of technological advancement.
On the one hand, these technologies hold immense promise. They have the potential to automate mundane tasks, increase productivity, and create entirely new industries. Self-driving cars, for example, could revolutionize transportation, reducing accidents, easing congestion, and improving accessibility for the elderly and disabled.
But the rapid pace of automation also carries a dark side. Millions of jobs once considered secure are at risk of being displaced by machines. Truck drivers, factory workers, even white-collar professionals like lawyers and accountants face an uncertain future as algorithms and robots become increasingly sophisticated.
The social and economic consequences of this disruption are profound. Mass unemployment, coupled with widening income inequality, could lead to social unrest, political instability, and a breakdown of the social contract. Governments around the world face the daunting challenge of adapting to this new reality, of retraining workers, providing safety nets, and ensuring that the benefits of technological progress are shared more equitably.
Section 4. The Currency Cold War. The US dollar, long the undisputed king of the international monetary system, finds its reign under threat. A new currency Cold War is brewing, a battle for financial supremacy that could reshape the global balance of power.
For decades, the dollar has enjoyed an unparalleled position of privilege. It has served as the world's primary reserve currency, the medium of exchange for international trade, and the safe haven for investors seeking stability in uncertain times.
This dominance has allowed the United States to borrow cheaply, to finance its massive trade deficits, and to project its economic and military might around the world. But this privileged position is no longer unassailable.
Rivals, led by China, are actively seeking to reduce their reliance on the dollar and to create alternative financial systems. They are establishing their own cross-border payment systems, conducting trade in their own currencies, and accumulating gold reserves as a hedge against dollar instability.
This challenge to the dollar's hegemony is driven by a complex mix of factors, including economic nationalism, geopolitical rivalry, and a desire for greater financial autonomy.
The outcome of this currency Cold War remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. The global financial system is undergoing a period of profound transformation, and the stakes for all involved are higher than ever.
Section 5. The triggers. Three triggers. Three seemingly disparate strands of global change, yet intricately interwoven, poised to unravel the fabric of the existing world order. Climate change, technological disruption, and de-dollarization. Each a potent force on its own, but together a recipe for unprecedented upheaval.
Climate change, the ultimate disruptor, acts as a threat multiplier. It exacerbates existing tensions, ignites new conflicts over scarce resources, and creates mass displacement, destabilizing entire regions. The influx of climate refugees, fleeing rising seas and uninhabitable lands, strains the resources of receiving nations, stoking social unrest and fueling nationalist sentiment.
Technological disruption, driven by the relentless pace of innovation, further complicates the picture. Artificial intelligence and automation, while holding immense promise, also threaten to displace millions of workers, widening the gap between the haves and the have-nots and creating a fertile ground for social unrest. The rise of cyber warfare adds another layer of complexity, as nation-states and non-state actors alike exploit vulnerabilities in the digital realm to sow discord, disrupt critical infrastructure, and undermine trust in institutions.
And as the world grapples with these multifaceted challenges, the very foundation of the global financial system, the US dollar's dominance, is called into question. De-dollarization, driven by a desire for greater financial autonomy and fueled by geopolitical rivalry, threatens to undermine the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency, potentially triggering a global financial crisis and ushering in an era of economic uncertainty. Section 6. The Global Fault Lines. The world is a tapestry of interconnected systems, a complex web of relationships and dependencies. And like any tapestry, it has its weak points, its fault lines where the threads are most likely to unravel under pressure. In this era of unprecedented change, these fault lines, these zones of vulnerability are becoming increasingly apparent. The South China Sea, a vital artery of global trade and a flashpoint for territorial disputes, simmers with tension as China asserts its dominance, challenging the United States' long-standing naval supremacy in the region. The Arctic, once a frozen wasteland, is thawing at an alarming rate, opening up new shipping lanes and access to vast reserves of natural resources. This scramble for Arctic riches pits major powers against each other, raising the specter of conflict in a region once considered beyond the reach of geopolitical competition. The Middle East, long a cauldron of instability, faces a confluence of challenges, from water scarcity and climate change to sectarian violence and the resurgence of great power competition. The region's vast oil and gas reserves, once a source of strategic leverage, could become a liability as the world transitions to renewable energy sources. These are just a few examples of the global fault lines where the convergence of climate change, technological disruption, and geopolitical rivalry could trigger conflict, destabilize entire regions, and reshape the balance of power. The world watches with bated breath, aware that the choices made in these crucible moments will determine the course of the 21st century. Section 7. America's Choice. America stands at a crossroads, its future uncertain, its choices fraught with consequence. The path ahead is fraught with peril, but within the storm clouds, a glimmer of hope remains. The nation that once reshaped the world in its image now faces a stark choice: adapt and reinvent, or cling to the past and face the consequences. The old playbook, the one that relied on military might, economic dominance, and the unquestioned supremacy of the US dollar, is no longer sufficient. The world has moved on, and America must evolve or risk being left behind. The path of adaptation demands a fundamental reassessment of priorities. It requires investing in education, infrastructure, and innovation, the foundations of a 21st century economy. It means embracing diplomacy and multilateralism, forging alliances based on shared interests rather than outdated notions of hegemony. It also requires addressing the existential threat of climate change, not with denial or delay, but with the urgency and resolve that the crisis demands. Investing in renewable energy, promoting sustainable practices, and leading the global effort to combat climate change is not just a moral imperative but a strategic necessity. The path of clinging to the past, of doubling down on militarism, protectionism, and unilateral action is a recipe for disaster. It will only accelerate America's decline, fueling resentment abroad and undermining its credibility on the world stage. It will leave the nation ill-equipped to confront the challenges of the 21st century, a relic of a bygone era. The choice is clear, but the time to act is running out. The decisions made in the coming years will determine not only America's fate, but the future of the global order. Section 1. The war drums beat. A disquiet settles upon the world. The air crackles with tension, a palpable sense of dread hanging heavy in the corridors of power. Diplomatic efforts falter, replaced by a dangerous game of brinkmanship, of military posturing, of threats whispered and ultimatums delivered. The unthinkable, once relegated to the realm of dystopian fiction, now casts a long shadow over a world teetering on the precipice of chaos. The war drums beat, a rhythmic pulse that quickens the heart and chills the soul. The reasons for conflict, once clear-cut and ideologically driven, now appear as a tangled knot of desperation, of competition for dwindling resources, of fear and mistrust amplified by a global system in meltdown. Climate change, the relentless disruptor, fuels this descent into darkness. As temperatures rise, as sea levels climb, as once fertile lands wither and die, the fight for survival intensifies. Water, once a source of life, becomes a weapon, a bargaining chip in a high-stakes game of geopolitical chess. The old alliances forged in the crucible of past conflicts crumble under the weight of new realities. The rules of engagement, once governed by a semblance of international law, erode as nations prioritize self-preservation above all else. The world, once interconnected and interdependent, fragments into a patchwork of competing interests, a breeding ground for suspicion, rivalry, and ultimately, war. Section 2. The Scramble for Survival. The Arctic, once a desolate wasteland of ice and snow, now beckons with the promise of untapped riches. Climate change, the great transformer, has melted the polar ice caps, opening up new shipping lanes and exposing vast reserves of oil, natural gas, and rare earth minerals. The scramble for these resources, a modern-day gold rush with apocalyptic stakes, pits nation against nation, igniting the first sparks of a global conflagration. Russia, its economy heavily reliant on fossil fuel exports, views the Arctic as its rightful domain, a frozen extension of its vast Siberian territories. China, hungry for resources to fuel its insatiable economic engine, sees the Arctic as a strategic prize, a key to breaking free from dependence on foreign energy sources. The United States, its global influence waning, views the Arctic as a vital testing ground for its military might, a last stand against the rising tide of challengers to its hegemony. Canada, Denmark, and Norway, once peripheral players in the Arctic drama, now find themselves thrust onto the center stage, their own territorial claims caught in the crossfire of great power competition. The scramble for Arctic resources is not merely a geopolitical game, it is a fight for survival. As climate change wreaks havoc on agricultural production, as water scarcity becomes the new normal, as populations swell and resources dwindle, the Arctic's bounty takes on an almost mythical significance. The nations that control these resources will control the future, leaving the rest to grapple with the consequences of a world on fire. The old wounds of history, long buried beneath a fragile veneer of peace, reopen with a vengeance. In the heart of Europe, where the ghosts of empires past still linger, a regional conflict, fueled by nationalist fervor and the insatiable hunger for power, explodes into a global conflagration. The conflict, sparked by a border dispute, a historical grievance, a calculated provocation, escalates with terrifying speed. Alliances once deemed ironclad crumble under the weight of national interest and the fog of war. Miscalculations abound, fueled by misinformation, propaganda, and the fog of war. The echoes of the past resonate with chilling familiarity, the hubris of empires, the seductive allure of expansionism, the belief in one's own righteousness. All the ingredients for a world war are present, waiting for a spark to ignite the inferno. The United States, haunted by the ghosts of its own interventions in far-flung corners of the globe, finds itself drawn into the maelstrom, compelled to defend its allies, to uphold the crumbling facade of a rules-based order. But the cost of intervention, both in blood and treasure, is higher than ever before, and the outcome far from certain. As the world watches in horror, history repeats itself, not as farce but as tragedy. The lessons learned, the sacrifices made, the promises of never again, all forgotten in the rush to war, in the blind pursuit of power and the delusional belief that this time, it will be different. The unthinkable, the nightmare scenario long discussed in hushed tones in the Pentagon's war rooms, now looms large, a full-blown war with China. The Dragon and the Eagle, the world's two superpowers, locked in a deadly embrace, their rivalry no longer confined to economic competition and diplomatic maneuvering, but played out on battlefields across the globe. The conflict, long in the making, erupts over Taiwan, the self-governing island that China claims as its own. A series of miscalculations, a cyber attack, a naval incident, a show of force gone wrong. The reasons for war, like always, seem both inevitable and utterly avoidable in retrospect. The conflict, once ignited, spirals out of control with terrifying speed. Hypersonic missiles streak across the sky, leaving trails of fire and destruction in their wake. Cyber attacks cripple critical infrastructure, plunging cities into darkness and disrupting global communications. Artificial intelligence, once hailed as the future of warfare, becomes the harbinger of unimaginable destruction. The South China Sea, transformed into a cauldron of naval warfare, witnesses clashes between aircraft carrier strike groups, submarine battles fought in the murky depths, and swarms of autonomous drones raining down fire from the skies. The world watches in horror as the two superpowers, blinded by hubris and driven by the logic of mutually assured destruction, push humanity to the brink of annihilation. The world, once vibrant and teeming with life, lies in ruins. The cities, once gleaming symbols of human achievement, now reduced to rubble-strewn landscapes haunted by the ghosts of their former inhabitants. The air, thick with smoke and ash, carries the stench of death and the bitter taste of regret. The cost of war, always high, has never been greater. Millions, perhaps billions, lie dead, victims of the insatiable hunger for power, the failure of diplomacy, the hubris of those who believed they could control the winds of war. The global economy, once interconnected and interdependent, lies in shambles. Supply chains, shattered beyond repair, leave nations struggling to provide even the most basic necessities for their citizens. Famine stalks the land, a grim reaper claiming those who managed to survive the initial onslaught. The environment, already reeling from the impacts of climate change, bears the scars of conflict for generations to come. Radioactive fallout from nuclear detonations poisons the air, water, and soil. The oceans, once teeming with life, become vast graveyards, choked by debris and contaminated by chemical weapons. The survivors, haunted by the memories of what they have lost, face an uncertain future in a world forever changed. The old order, shattered beyond repair, offers no guidance, no comfort, no hope. The war, fought to preserve a way of life, has destroyed the very foundations upon which that life was built. The silence that follows the last bomb blast is deafening, a testament to the folly of mankind and the enduring power of destruction. Amidst the ruins, the dust settles on a world transformed. The familiar landmarks of American dominance, once symbols of unyielding power, now lie shattered, mere relics of a bygone era. The stars and stripes, once a beacon of hope for some, a symbol of oppression for others, no longer command the same awe, the same fear, the same begrudging respect. In their place, a mosaic of new realities takes shape, a world grappling with the consequences of unchecked ambition and the collapse of the old order. The streets of once bustling metropolises, now eerily silent, bear the scars of conflict and neglect. The hum of industry, the symphony of commerce, the cacophony of everyday life, all replaced by an unsettling quietude, a constant reminder of what has been lost. The ghosts of the fallen, their voices silenced by the roar of bombs and the indifference of fate, linger in the shadows, their presence felt in the hollow eyes of the survivors. The global networks that once connected the world, the intricate webs of trade, finance, and communication, lie in tatters, severed by conflict, distrust, and the sheer weight of collapse. The free flow of information, once taken for granted, becomes a precious commodity, tightly controlled, manipulated, and weaponized by those who seek to rebuild the world in their own image. Amidst the ruins, a profound sense of disorientation prevails. The old certainties, the comforting illusions of stability and progress have vanished, replaced by a gnawing sense of uncertainty, a fear of the unknown that hangs heavy in the air. The world, once seemingly on the cusp of a new era of interconnectedness and prosperity, now teeters on the brink of a new dark age, a descent into fragmentation, chaos, and the tyranny of survival. As the dust settles on the wreckage of American hegemony, a new breed of power emerges from the shadows. These are not the traditional nation-states, drunk on dreams of empire and fueled by the insatiable hunger for resources and territory. Instead, they are the pragmatists, the survivors, the nations that navigated the turbulent waters of change by adhering to a different set of principles. adaptability, sustainability, and strategic neutrality. Singapore, a tiny island nation with a history of defying the odds, emerges as a beacon of stability and innovation in a region grappling with uncertainty. Its embrace of technology, its strategic investment in education and infrastructure, and its unwavering commitment to a rules-based international order have made it a magnet for talent and investment, a shining example of how to thrive in a world no longer dominated by brute force.
Switzerland, long a bastion of neutrality amidst the storms of European history, finds its traditional values of diplomacy, discretion, and financial prudence more relevant than ever. Its role as a neutral intermediary, a facilitator of dialogue and a safe haven for assets, takes on new significance in a world riven by conflict and distrust.
New Zealand, geographically isolated yet globally connected, becomes a model of sustainability and resilience. Its commitment to renewable energy, its focus on environmental conservation, and its embrace of a more equitable and inclusive society have made it a haven for those seeking refuge from the chaos and uncertainty of a world in flux. These nations, diverse in their cultures, histories, and geographical locations, share a common thread, a pragmatic approach to global affairs that prioritizes cooperation over confrontation, innovation over imitation, and long-term sustainability over short-term gains. In a world weary of conflict and disillusioned by the false promises of empire, they offer a glimmer of hope, a testament to the enduring power of adaptability, ingenuity, and a commitment to a more just and equitable global order. While some nations adapt and evolve in the face of American decline, others see opportunity in chaos, a chance to fill the power vacuum with their own brand of order. These are the architects of authoritarian capitalism, the nations that prioritize efficiency above all else, offering a seductive blend of economic prosperity and social control. China, its economic and military might growing in the shadow of American retreat, seizes the opportunity to reshape the global order in its own image. Its Belt and Road Initiative, a modern-day Silk Road spanning continents, extends its economic and geopolitical influence, binding nations to its own vision of a world where efficiency and stability trump individual liberty and democratic ideals. The United Arab Emirates, a glittering oasis of wealth and ambition in a region racked by turmoil, leverages its strategic location, its vast oil reserves, and its reputation for business acumen to become a key node in the new global order. Its embrace of technological innovation, its close ties to both East and West, and its unwavering focus on economic growth make it a magnet for investment and a model for other aspiring powers. Russia, its economy battered by sanctions and its global influence diminished, finds new strength in its vast natural resources, its nuclear arsenal, and its willingness to use force to protect its interests. It aligns itself with other authoritarian powers, forging alliances based on shared grievances and a common desire to challenge the remnants of the Western-led order. These nations, each with their own unique history, culture, and set of motivations, converge on a common approach, a belief in the primacy of the state, a distrust of democratic ideals, and a willingness to sacrifice individual liberty in the name of stability and progress. Their model of authoritarian capitalism, while offering a seductive alternative to the chaos and uncertainty of a world in flux, comes at a steep price: the erosion of human rights, the suppression of dissent, and the creation of a world where the individual is subservient to the will of the state. The world watches, holds its breath. The saga of the American Empire, a story of ambition, power, and ultimately fragility, has reached its climax. The ruins of a future once imagined, of unquestioned dominance, now litter the landscape of possibility. Yet from the ashes of a fallen titan rises not despair, but a choice, a fork in the road starkly illuminated by the dying embers of the old order. One path, tempting in its simplicity, beckons with the siren song of retreat. To withdraw from the complexities of the world, to nurse the wounds of past hubris, to seek solace in the fading echoes of former glory. But such a path, while offering the illusion of comfort, is ultimately a dead end, a slow surrender to irrelevance on a planet grappling with challenges that transcend borders and ideologies. The other path, fraught with uncertainty yet shimmering with possibility, demands a reckoning, a transformation, a rebirth. It requires confronting the ghosts of empires past, acknowledging the limitations of force, and embracing the power of reinvention. It necessitates a shift from dominance to partnership, from exploitation to sustainability, from the pursuit of self-interest to the pursuit of the common good. This is not a choice for one nation, but for all. The stakes are too high, the consequences too dire to cling to the wreckage of the past. The 21st century, shaped by forces beyond the control of any single power, demands a new vision of global leadership, one grounded in cooperation, ingenuity, and a shared commitment to safeguarding the future of humanity. The choice is ours, and history will not judge us kindly if we fail to choose wisely.